This is the most exciting electric car from China for many on the internet, and in this video, we're going to explore what the Xiaomi SU7 can do. We'll talk about charging, why it's suddenly approved in Germany, the design, and we'll also discuss competitors. We're testing out the chassis and the overall driving dynamics, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe below the video for free. The channel helps me immensely in my work to be able to show you things like this. In the last 90 days, over 1 million different people have been on the channel and watched videos. I'd be thrilled if some of you clicked to subscribe. And with that, hey and welcome to this new video here with Jonas, and welcome to the first impression of the Xiaomi SU7. Now, let's talk about the currently available top-of-the-line model from the Chinese, I'll say it again, smartphone or technology manufacturer Xiaomi, and their electric car. And when it was introduced, many said, this is the perfect Tesla Model 3 rival. That's why I've placed our Model 3 right beside it again, to clearly show you that it's not actually the case. Because the Xiaomi measures in at a length of 4.99 meters, whereas the Tesla is actually over 30 centimeters shorter. And that should unmistakably demonstrate that this is in an entirely different league altogether. But why would they call it a Model 3 rival? Simply because of the price. Let's talk about it later, but just based on the size alone, I've even placed it a bit offset here, but you can clearly see it's a completely different vehicle class, and no worries, I'm not going to spend the entire video comparing it to a Porsche Taycan, because in a way, it's kind of a Taycan killer, if you want to describe it like that. The technical specs, especially the performance figures, but also the range and so on, should head in that direction, and I'm excited to see what we'll get a first glimpse of today. Can figure out together, but why, of all companies, is a Chinese phone manufacturer selling electric cars? And why is it suddenly appearing in Germany? Let's begin here. Xiaomi is a Chinese manufacturer. In Germany, we mainly know it for household devices and smartphones. Most of us have probably seen or owned a smartphone from them at some point. And there's even more. Robot vacuums, lawn mowers, and even washing machines along with kitchen gadgets. So it's a major electronics giant from China, and they eventually made the strategic decision to build a car. There are two reasons. For one, the American market completely collapsed. America has completely banned the import of all Chinese electronic products, particularly smartphones, entirely. That's why this massive market collapsed almost overnight. On the other hand, the Chinese government is also heavily promoting e-mobility. Unfortunately, there's no clear indication of how much funding from the Chinese government has been directed into Xiaomi, so they could bring an electric car to life. However, it's known that between 200 and 300 billions of euros have been invested by China into its electric car industry over the past decade alone, and that's precisely why everyone is now building cars. Huawei is doing it as well. Ultimately, brands like Zeekr or others were just launched because there was suddenly money for it. Xiaomi has secured over $10 billion in funding to construct a factory. They're not building it on their own, but in collaboration with Beijing Motors. That's the name of the manufacturer involved. We're familiar with BAIC in Germany from several models, and they're the ones manufacturing this model here for Xiaomi. And that's also from the collaboration it's written on the back. Meanwhile, they have kind of outsourced a bit with their own factory. So what exactly is Xiaomi doing in Germany now? Well, that's all thanks to Auto China. You can clearly see the importer's name, and Marcel is the one behind it all. He's here with us today. We met up with him to test and showcase the car, and he's the one importing the vehicles here to Germany so you can buy them. We'll go over the price later on, including the German one, but it's actually quite interesting for all of you who are considering driving an exotic vehicle. There are a few compromises, so we're starting by filming at the charging station. But let's jump right into the specs and the design. Xiaomi didn't completely develop the car on its own, but instead integrated some well-suited components. For example, the braking system comes from Brembo, the battery from CATL, and some components, of course, come from well-known, reputable manufacturers. Bosch control units and more are also inside. Let's focus on the battery. 101 kilowatt-hours NMC battery on 800-volt technology, of which you can use 99 kilowatt-hours. That's really a lot. There aren't too many vehicles in that segment and size that come equipped with such a large battery. I think that's really great. The charging capacity is stated as 480 kilowatts, but we'll talk later about what that means for the German market. We already covered the exterior dimensions earlier next to the Tesla Model 3, but now let's check some other specs. The vehicle delivers 495 kilowatts with all-wheel drive, and despite its name Max, it's not the highest performance variant yet. There's also an Ultra version, which currently holds the Nürburgring Nordschleife lap record for production vehicles. Xiaomi didn't just think, let's drop an electric car. No, they also made the bold decision to step into the world of motorsport. That's why this one also stands pretty well with 838 Newton meters and still manages to achieve a range of 800 kilometers. But not according to our WLTP cycle, but rather the Chinese CLTC cycle. You can't convert that precisely at the moment. I'd assume it's more like 10–20% below. Then it's realistically around 600 to just under 700 kilometers by WLTP, which would still be a really good value for such a vehicle. After all, it has to compete with a Volkswagen ID.7, but also with larger ones, of course. The Audi A6 and BMW i5 are certainly in the same class and want to be challenged, and I know the Porsche Taycan and of course the e-tron GT are also somewhere in the framework or on the list. It's a bit tricky to categorize it properly. In China, the standard version is launching. The SU7 at 29,000 euros, at least when you convert it, and it's really a competitive price if you can call it that. Here's the current top-tier version because the Ultra won't be available for now. That one comes in at around 38,000 euros when converted. You might wonder what's going on. The car costs nearly 70,000 euros in China, including transport, import, and of course, you have to factor in what's been homologated in the background. If you ask me, it's pretty expensive for what you're getting, especially considering the features and overall value of the vehicle. If you now compare the vehicle based on its technical specs in the market, and if we momentarily set aside the whole topic that we'll look at later, Chinese software and the charging situation, it's actually a comparable price. It's just that it's still an imported car, and we don't yet know how things stand with the dealer network, spare parts, and much more. You'll find all the information on that at AutoChina. I say that here because they are the ones distributing the car there, and they handle all matters related to warranties and such, just to be clear. I'm going to test the car now, and then you can decide for yourselves whether it would be worth importing it on your own. First, you'll need to configure it accordingly because that's an option. It's not just about stock vehicles, and yet used electric cars are being imported because people use this trick, then only having to pay 10% tariffs instead of the new punitive tariffs. Actually quite smart, just so you know, but you won't get a brand new car. And you've still got the issue with charging. Right now, in this version, you're only charging at 11 kilowatts. But that's only half the truth because there's also an adapter from the Chinese standard to the European one. You'll receive that with the delivery. However, you'll then be far from the 480 kilowatts that the car could actually achieve in charging speed thanks to its 800-volt system. And those 15 minutes from 10 to 80 will also feel like a distant dream, since the adapter limits the maximum charging speed to just 160 kilowatts in Germany. I would hope and imagine that the car, even with just 160 kilowatts, could still manage. Continuously charges, meaning truly from plugging in up to 80%, because it could then reach a plateau, and theoretically the car is capable of more, so at least with 800 volts it should work. Maybe we can also test that out sometime. If you're interested, then leave a like as mentioned at the beginning of the video, and also feel free to drop me a comment below. What else you'd like to know about it? For now, 160 kilowatts and 11 kilowatts AC is the compromise. And since the car currently only charges with AC, we're standing here at the station and using the location for the static stuff. 30 kilowatt hours, we've already recharged in almost 3 hours. So we can actually get a driving impression later on. But before that, let's talk about the storage options. The trunk varies depending on whether you have the all-wheel drive or the rear-wheel drive version. Here in the all-wheel drive version, it's just under 500 liters. The rear-wheel drive version then has, I believe, around 30 liters more. Don't ask me why they make a distinction, even though both of them always have a rear motor. The trunk access is similar to what you know from the Model 3. That means while you have a relatively steep loading surface here, you don't necessarily benefit from it, that you have such a large hatch. It's a bit of a shame because you sort of waste a lot of the actual space because of it. And it also extends downward. There's a deeper section on the right side and a bit less so on the left. I think the main distinction there will simply be between all-wheel drive and pure rear-wheel drive. But that's not all, because there's also a frunk, and it comes with 109 liters of space. In my opinion, that's really reasonable for this class, and it's also nice and wide with a good shape. You can effortlessly combine the two elements seamlessly. The interior is sporty, high quality, and stylishly designed, offering both comfort and a refined aesthetic. Here we have the Founders Edition. I'm not entirely sure about the materials here, but there's microfiber, Alcantara, wood accents, faux leather, stitching. Visually, it all looks great. Or rather, what was added on top for this Founders Edition, or what's specifically unique and distinctive about it. I think it's really cool though. We have a very sporty steering wheel, yet modern, with the design elements reminiscent of the Clique. A bit like Audi, I'd say, and here at the back it looks very much like Porsche, exactly like the seats. You sit really comfortably in it, with everything being fully electrically adjustable, and there's an air head-up display. We'll discuss it while driving. 16.1 inches. There's a display here. In the base version, it's just the display. But now we can see there are even controls below it, and these are just a few examples of the many accessory products available. I'll show it to you here. For example, we have an extra tachometer that you can mount on top, a phone mount, or, what's quite fun, these LED strips that are on the right and left and can rhythmically light up along with the music or just complement the ambient lighting. And below the video, I received a link from Marcel where I get a little something if any of you order through it. So thank you very much for that. Additionally, you'll receive all these products completely free of charge. These products are usually only available as accessories. Very important to mention right here, and you can get them right below the video. How else is the setup? Very typical Chinese, you have to say. Here are a few elements. For example, the spoiler adjustment. It can be adjusted in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels. So there's really something for everyone. And you can, for example, adjust the ventilation, the temperature, and the vehicle level because the air suspension can be controlled through that, and it's just a click away. It's really super high quality. Everything is also fitted with these metal accents. There's absolutely no trace of piano lacquer or anything similar here. Everything is crafted with high quality materials and has a beautifully matte finish. So I feel comfortable, it's well made, and down here there's a huge storage space. Plus, it ventilates 50-watt phone charging. I can test it out by placing this inside here. So, once I put it in here, it starts charging right away, lights up nicely, and it's also cooled from below, which at 50 watts can actually make a difference. Not that the iPhone could do it, but that's a whole different story. The software is running entirely in Chinese at the moment. Let me show you a few things. For example, you can customize these widgets here, and then there's the app launcher down below. For example, there's Apple CarPlay, which works wirelessly here, and also Android Auto. Additionally, you have the option to use music streaming. Of course, it's all Chinese stuff, but there's also route planning available. I'm not entirely sure how well that would actually work with charging, route planning, and all that stuff. I also think that navigation in Europe just isn't quite there yet. If I zoom out here, I can't see anything at all. The car seems to think we're here, but there's no map data or any additional information available. But it's fine since you can use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, though it's a bit of a compromise. And many other vehicles that come natively in German, they've got it integrated accordingly. Maserati showed me a video. There's already a car with English software, and it's set to be rolled out to all the vehicles delivered. For the demo car here, it's not yet available. A shame, I'd have loved to show you. I've been clicking around a bit with Google Translate. It worked pretty well, but of course, it's a whole different story and challenge on its own. And the English software was running on the SU7 Ultra. That means it seems like it's coming to Germany soon too. I'm genuinely excited to get behind the wheel. Performance-wise, it's supposed to be on a completely different level. What you can't miss in a 2.2-ton car is soft close. At least, that's one of the features that contributes to the car's overall weight. I'd say that's likely true. Probably pricier too, especially given the German prices we're seeing now. I'm sitting really comfortably back here. Yeah, the floor is relatively high, and I'm slightly reclined in my seat. But the seat is really nice and long, and I also have plenty of headroom. Of course, the glass roof also contributes to that, which extends all the way back here, and there are grab handles at the top in the back and front right. They are even nicely upholstered and feature these clearly visible screw fastenings for added detail. But it's really stylishly designed. Even the lower section, which is made of hard plastic, feels high quality, and the material and overall execution strongly remind me of very much of NIO. So I got in here and immediately felt, yeah, it's NIO. And that's definitely not a bad thing because NIO is truly one of the leading players in Germany. They use top-quality Chinese components, and you have to admit, they've really figured out how to build cars by now, and this is on a similar level. Ambient lighting up here and a cool feature, simply a built-in fridge inside. For now, it's only available in the Founders Edition. Not sure if it'll be in the series later. Behind that, there are 2 phone holders, and is there a center armrest? Let's take a look together. Yes, there is one with 2 cup holders in the middle, but no pass-through or anything like that. ISOFIX is available on the rear outer seats and not on the passenger seat, but here you can see I have so much space in front. Here's another option, a phone holder, or I believe you can even attach a rear seat entertainment system, and this flap slides down out of the way. It's really detailed and well thought out, and I think it's a sensible choice to skip the display here and simply include 2 USB-C ports instead, a classic climate control. It feels really good. The backrest angle is quite steep, and unfortunately, I can't adjust it, which feels a bit restrictive at times. But it's really cool. I'd say now is the time we've got to move forward and drive. Just a quick heads up. You might have already seen it on YouTube. The car's really making its rounds, and it looks like someone managed to clip a curb at some point. That's why there's a Dacia parked here on the side, and I seriously considered it for a moment, but I've decided not to take the car onto the highway today after all. Sorry, but it's just too risky and not worth the trouble. That's why we'll do the Autobahn test then, maybe with the Ultra later. We'll see, but there are 1 or 2 colleagues who's dared to take it on the Autobahn. You'll get a clear idea from that. Shift into gear and it's immediately obvious. It even detects parking spaces. That means I could theoretically initiate an automated parking process to park in the space to my left. Of course, all of that is just fun gimmicks, but there are also the classic camera views, and I think that's a really cool layout. On one hand, there's a top-down perspective, where you can also catch a clear, transparent glimpse of the underbody. And then you're provided with the front and rear cameras here, along with wheel cameras. And that's something many of you always consider crucial, being able to identify curbs, spot obstacles, and quickly switch between views for better awareness. I think it's pretty cool. It's a nice setup. Let's see when we pull out here what the turning radius is like. So, just based on the camera view, it's going pretty well. Now let's turn around here. It's not quite at the level of MEB vehicles, but it's reasonable and almost has a better turning radius than my Model 3, I'd say. Although we're dealing with a longer wheelbase here and more importantly, a vehicle that's significantly longer overall. Let's see, there's cobblestone up ahead, what it lets through. That's actually quite good. Right now, truly unfiltered first impression here as we just started driving. I thought I'll record it for you so you get a sense of what I'm seeing and feeling right now. And that's really good. So let's take a closer look and see what the next meter here will reveal to us. Since we're still driving around the city right now, I can show you something fun. What's funny, that's obviously a really cool feature. You can set the recuperation in percentage, and I can actually slow down the car using this slider because it allows me to adjust it adaptively while driving. And at 100%, you fully achieve one-pedal driving, allowing the vehicle to slow down completely until it stops. Just quickly passing the cyclists here. So, I'm still in comfort mode. That went pretty well ahead. Now there's a red light here and a car in front of us, regenerating all the way down. I can adjust it well. The last stop still coasts a bit, but it's working quite nicely. Everything is displayed clearly in the head-up display, speed in the center, battery level on the left, and navigation info on the right. The car pulls that data from Apple CarPlay, displayed here in the center, nice and big. As I mentioned earlier, it looks really nice in the center. With these small apps displayed so large and in high resolution, you rarely see that, but it's ultimately the only option available here. How you can currently use navigation here in Europe? I can easily cycle through the different driving modes by using the rotary dial on the steering wheel, moving from comfort and individual to eco, sport, and all the way up to sport plus. And if I press it in the center, I then have the ability to, for instance, activate launch control. 2.76 seconds is what Xiaomi claims. And it really pushes hard. So, when you're here, wow, the suspension is insane. So driving here on this twisty forest road, it's really good. So it's really impressive what you've got on the road here. Going to switch back to comfort mode in a sec. Or do you notice that's insane? Like the throttle response is completely different in comfort mode, for one. He doesn't hang on the gas as much, it's way more controlled. I can really play around with my foot a lot more freely. But the suspension also switches entirely, so it shifts directly and becomes significantly softer. You know it from my videos here, I just prefer it to be sportier. And I thought it was really well tuned. So, by chance, we've discovered the perfect road here for something like this. But it feels completely different. Wow, I'm genuinely and positively impressed. This is just a first impression here, and it's really just about getting a feel for what the suspension can do, how the car behaves, and how far the Chinese have actually come. Sure, something like the active ride at Porsche might be on another level, but if you really look at it price-wise and compare it to, say, a Tesla Model 3 Performance or even an i4 M50, they just can't compete. And that's for a first attempt from an electronics manufacturer that's never had any prior experience or involvement in the automotive industry before. Well, it's not like they were making, I don't know, control units or engines for cars before. They had an e-scooter once, that was it. So for that, it's really impressive, and it genuinely grips the road incredibly well. Crazy. It's absolutely brutal. Seriously, I'm genuinely convinced it's undeniably sports car level. It has a slight pull when you accelerate, but of course that could also be due to tires that have been through a lot. But essentially, I think you saw it quite well, but I'm really impressed. And it's not just because Marcel was sitting in the car, ready in case something happened, since it's his car, currently the only one in Germany, was on site. No, that was genuinely my first impression, and it's absolutely wild. There's hardly any comparable vehicle in its class, or even across the entire automotive market, with a chassis as remarkable as this one. I've rarely seen anything quite like it. I'm thrilled we ended up picking this spot by chance, as the car had to charge here and then we got this driving through the curves in the roads here just now, but it's truly staggering how far ahead the Chinese really are. What a technology manufacturer brings in terms of understanding how an electric car needs to function, and still also an understanding of chassis dynamics. Because that was often the problem. People would say, well, they just build a computer on wheels and it works quite well. Nah, it's genuinely a really good car. And that honestly took me by surprise. I'm excited to hopefully show you the SU7 soon. That's why I'd also be happy if you subscribe to the channel here, so you don't miss out on that in the future. Otherwise, I'll show you up here the competitor, if you want to call it that, the Tesla Model 3 Performance. Here we've got our latest Chinese model,